to ARC Tutorials, and this is Bootstrap Top 55 Interview Question and Answer Series. I'll be covering this series in 5 parts. Each part will cover around 10-12 questions, and today is the first part, and I'll cover all the questions with detailed explanations. Before I get started with the question answer series, I have a Bootstrap 5 full tutorial playlist which has more than 40 plus tutorials and some live examples. If you really want to learn Bootstrap, you should check this playlist out. Also, if you like my work and tutorials, please do consider buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/arctutorials. If you have any queries, any doubts, write to me at surya.aradhya@gmail.com. Also, you can get all these question and answer series as a PDF copy at arctutorials.gumroad.com. Thank you so much in advance. Let's get started with the first question, which is describe what is Bootstrap. This is the first and basic opening question, mostly if you are a UI developer or a UI designer. The way to answer that is Bootstrap is a HTML, CSS, JS framework for building rich web applications with minimal effort. Bootstrap is a front-end framework that is used as a mobile-first and approach for building mobile-first applications with designs, and it has a lot of components like drop-down, table, forms. It has a great support for grids and other utilities. Okay, so keep it short and simple. Don't open it too much. Just talk that it's a front-end framework. It's a mobile-first approach. It's responsive. It has grid. It has columns. It has components, and it supports different HTML, CSS, JS utilities. Okay, that's how you should answer this question. The next logical question that comes up is why use Bootstrap framework? Okay, there are a lot of reasons that you can talk about. Here are some of the things, but if I have to answer it, I'll say Bootstrap is a leading free and open source framework which is compatible with most of the modern browsers. It has a lot of responsive features. It's easy to use, and there are several components, utilities. It has mobile support and large number of themes, templates available. Also, it's used by large enterprises, so it's reliable, it's not going anywhere. Okay, so talk about some of these points that I've listed here to highlight why use Bootstrap. Then the question naturally also can be extended like, can you talk about some of the striking features of Bootstrap high level? Okay, so if they ask you high level, you can talk that there are a lot of CSS utilities, right? So almost anything and everything that you can do in CSS can be is already defined in Bootstrap as either part of component or as a utility. Provides a scaffolding, which means that you can develop a full-fledged grid system, responsive grid system for different devices and screen resolutions. You have different layouts that you can choose from, fluid or fixed layouts. Talk about some of the components like tables, buttons, forms, accordions, links, button, header, cards, much more. Some of the plugins, right, extended can be used with JavaScript, but Bootstrap 5 doesn't need JavaScript. Okay, but some of the JavaScript components plugins can be used. Now you can customize the Sass and create our own mini framework sort of things on top of Bootstrap. Okay, that's how you should answer this question, especially when they talk about high level features. Next, they'll talk about describe some of the components of Bootstrap, UI components, right? Now this is where you will talk in detail, okay? Like alerts, buttons, checkboxes, radio buttons, carousel, drop down, models, navbar, toast, tooltip, popover, scroll spy, forms, right? All of those things, popovers. You can talk about a lot of UI components, okay? So pick few that you are confident and answer those as starting and explain them in detail. I have listed a lot of things here. You can use this for reference. What are the different options for adding Bootstrap to your project? Okay, now this is a definite question. If you are going for a UI developer role, they'll ask you this with Bootstrap. What are the different ways you can use Bootstrap? First, you can use ready to use compiled CSS JS code. Okay, like you can just download the JS and CSS and include it and start using it. You can use a full-fledged Sass source files, customize them, extend them, build on top of it however you want. We can also use it as a third party, just Bootstrap CDN, right? CDN stands for Content Delivery Network. like URLs that are hosted and given to you. The last option is installing through package managers. Let's say you are working with Angular, React, or Vue, and you want to use Bootstrap. You can use it via either npm, or you can use yarn, or etc., like Composer, Ruby Gems, right? So these are all the different mechanisms you can add Bootstrap to your project. I have covered all these details in the tutorial. Make sure that you check out my Bootstrap 5 playlist to learn all of these details. Now let's talk in detail about some of the Bootstrap utility classes and functionalities. Like, explain Bootstrap container, right? Now, very basic thing, everybody should be aware of this. Bootstrap container is a class which is useful and creates a centered area within the page of the viewport. Okay. Now, containers are the most fundamental component in Bootstrap. The first thing you write inside a body is a container, right? For any element, it behaves like there are two types of containers, right? One is both are responsive, like one is fixed, one is fluid. Okay, I'll explain them as we progress in this series, but for now all you should know is Bootstrap is a most fundamental component in Bootstrap. It behaves like a container where you place your HTML code and then where the content of the site can be placed. Containers by default are responsive. Okay, we added by adding the class dot container. Okay, remember that. Now, what are the different layouts available, right? I talked about fluid layout and I talked about fixed layout, right? When you say container fluid and container fixed, right? So we have two types of layouts available. Fluid layout is used when you want to create an app that is 100% wide, okay, 100% of the viewport screen. Fixed layout is a standard resolution. It's responsive, but you will use it fixed layout with 940 pixel option, right? Again, that's the only difference. Like, both are responsive, but fixed will get it into a fixed layout, whereas fluid will occupy 100% of the width. So talk about those layouts. Now define fluid layout, right? I'll talk a little bit more about each of it. So fluid layout is useful when you need to make up a app which involves full width of the screen. Okay. Now the fluid layout will automatically adjust itself according to the browser size. If you are watching the Bootstrap on a 1200 pixel, it will be 100%. If you are watching it on a 1600 pixel, it will still spread, right? So the class for that is dot container hyphen fluid. Okay, when you add this class, it will become full width container, and its entire width of the viewport, it is responsive. Okay, remember these three keywords. Now talk about fixed. Okay, now fixed layout is responsive but cannot adjust itself according to the browser size. Let's say you are watching a website on a 1200 pixel, right? It will not scale to 1200. It will still be 940 pixel in most cases that you define. When you add dot container, it will provide a responsive fixed width. Remember that fixed width is the keyword here. Whereas in fluid, it will be 100% width. Now, explain typography in Bootstrap. Bootstrap sets a basic global display background, typography, link styles, all of those, right? Like, there are default styles of background, of padding, there is typography, there is a predefined font size base, font size, line height, and then there are styles for link, there is styles for text, and those things. So talk about typography has a lot of details, like how your text will look, heading, subheading, muted text, font sizes, default font, all of this forms your typography. Okay, and why is typography used? It's used because you don't want your team members to write extra CSS. Everybody should use a standard set typography, and that's where Bootstrap provides that. Alright, that brings us to the end of this particular episode and part 1. I'll be covering 5 parts in total. In the next part, we'll continue learning about more questions. I hope this tutorial will help you really prepare for your interviews and will help you crack that interview. To get all these questions as a PDF copy, you can visit arctutorials.gumroad.com. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you in the next episode. Welcome back to Arc Tutorials. This is Bootstrap Top 55 Interview Question and Answer Series. This is the part 2 of the series. Make sure that you check out the first part, as we have covered around 11 questions there as well. Before we get started with the question answer series, I want to inform you that I have a Bootstrap 5 full tutorial playlist in my channel where I have covered more than 40 plus tutorials which will really help you master Bootstrap 5. Make sure you check out the playlist to learn and master Bootstrap 5. Also, you can get this entire 5 parts book into a ebook PDF copy at arctutorials.gumroad.com. Make sure you get your ebook. Alright, so let's start with today's first question, that is, what is Bootstrap grid system? The Bootstrap grid system is a mobile first responsive grid system that scales up to 12 columns. Very important question, important that you answer it equally well. So you should talk about Bootstrap grid system is a mobile first responsive grid, number one. Number two, you should tell that Bootstrap grid is that scales up, Bootstrap grid system scales up to 12 columns. Okay, that's second important point. Third, Bootstrap provides a lot of built-in default breakpoints like for extra small, small, medium, large, extra large and extra large. These are all the different breakpoints which are directly mapped to different screen resolutions. Okay, and that's why it is mobile first, because it will support from extra small device to extra large. Talk about how do you implement them. We write using call to assign a default width, or if you want on a certain device certain way, you can use call -xs, call -sm, call -md, call -lg, and so on. Make sure that you get these points very clear, because this is going to be asked to you. When they start talking about grid, obviously they are going to talk about offset columns, right? So what is column offsetting? Column offsetting means when we want to push certain columns or move certain columns from its original position, that's where we will use column offsetting. And how do we implement them? We write the class offset -md -n, where n is the number of columns we want to push the code. Okay, so now let's say you have a default column here. You look at the code call md4, but here we are saying offset md4. That means move this by 4 columns, right? That's how you implement offset columns. I've covered these in detail on my playlist, so make sure you check that out so that you get practical knowledge also. Alright, so the next question they are going to ask you is, what is column ordering? The previous question was about column offset. This is about column ordering. So what is column ordering? Column ordering allows us to arrange the visual order of the content, right? We can move certain blocks of code or elements into a certain order based on our requirement. Like for example, you can define here order first, order hyphen last, etc. We can also use something like order 1 to order 6. Okay, that means these are the default built-in utility classes that we can directly assign the order. If we want to use it on a responsive devices, we can also mention order -md -1 2 3 to 6. Okay, very important concept. These three topics that I touched now: grid, column offsetting, and column ordering. They are extremely critical, especially if you're attending a role on UI developer with Bootstrap. They are going to ask you these questions. Alright, now next question is, how can you display code in Bootstrap? Right. So Bootstrap provides two ways where we can display code. One is using the code tag, and the other is using a predefined tag, right? Pre-tag of HTML. So these are two different uh, variations of how we can display code using Bootstrap. Okay, one is inline, one is standalone block. What are some of the contextual classes that are used for background color? Now this question has many variations, because they will ask you what are the contextual classes for, say, how do you set a background color of a button, of a link, or of an accordion, etc. The answer will be same. There are these fixed contextual classes that are called bg-primary, bg secondary, bg success, danger, warning, info, white, light, and dark. These are predefined in the framework, which means you can apply them to basically any element that you are using with, be it a div, button, link, accordion, card, anything and everything. You can apply these background colors. So remember that. Now, what are the default Bootstrap text settings? Now, this is important because sometimes people tend to fake their experience on Bootstrap, etc. So they want to see whether you know the basic resets or not. So the answer that you should tell is the default font family used is Helvetica New. That's the default one. And the default font size is 16 pixel with line height of 1.5. This margin top is 0 and margin bottoms are always 1 rem, and there is a 15 pixel gutters, right, padding for cards. So those are the default text settings that you should talk about as part of typography. Now they'll talk about, can you talk about pagination in Bootstrap? Now you should talk about the classes that are available as part of pagination, which are pagination, that tells the element that it's a pagination, ULLI. Then you have the page items, which is nothing but LI, like the list items in that particular UL. You have a page link, that's the anchor tags. Then you have active or disabled. They tell you whether you are in an active page mode or not. Explain input groups. Now this is also a tricky question. They can ask you how can you append @ to a text box, or how can you add certain things at the end of it, right? Same question, different way of asking. So there are two types of input groups in Bootstrap: prepend and append. We can use prepend or append add-on elements to form control. So wherever you have a form control element, you can add it in front or at the back. Okay. So if you want to add it at the front, you will use append, or if you want to use it behind, you will use append. If you want to use it in the front, you will use prepend. Okay. These are the two classes that you will add with the label, and it will start appearing. Again, one thing I forgot to touch base is these input groups are responsive, which means you can give input hyphen group hyphen the resolution, the breakpoint, like SM small, medium, large, etc. Right, how can you create a tabbed navigation menu? Right, so here they are trying to ask you a different variation of navigation, right? So here important thing is everything will be same, just like your navbar, right? It will have a ULLI class with nav, and then you will have nav hyphen tabs. That's what you need to mention. That's a default built-in class which would get us a tabbed navigation. Okay, so if you want to create tabs, you will use nav hyphen tabs. Rest everything is similar to navbar. You will have nav item, and nav link. Then you have nav item and nav link for each of it, right? That you will iterate. All right, the next question. Explain briefly how a navbar works, right? Now I touch based about navbar, so let's talk about it in detail. A navbar is a very eminent feature to make a responsive meta component that works as navigation headers for your application, right? That's the theoretical explanation. In other words, you can say that navbar is an important feature of Bootstrap, using which we create all the navigations in our application. It can be at the top header, it can be in the sidebar, it can be at the pagination level. There are various types of how you can, there are various flavors of where you can position how the navbars will behave. So you have navbar fixed top, that means it will always be fixed at the top. Then you have navbar fixed hyphen bottom, which will always be fixed at the bottom. Then you have sticky top, which means you will scroll to a position in the page, and that element will then get stuck there. I have covered all these details as part of position in the Bootstrap 5 tutorial. Make sure that you check that out if you really want to check out the hands-on examples with uh, live coding and practical knowledge. But remember, this is how you should talk about. Important thing, class is navbar. You can have navbar hyphen fixed hyphen top, bottom, default, or sticky top. Alright, that brings us to the end of part 2 in this particular series. This is a 5-part series. I have completed 2. I'll be rolling out the other 3 soon. So please do check them out. All the series in the all the parts in this particular series to learn and master Bootstrap 5 interview question and answers. I hope you will crack your dream job. I wish you all the best. Make sure you check out all the parts of the series. Thank you so much for joining. See you in the next episode. Back to ARC tutorials. This is Bootstrap top 55 interview question and answer series. This is the third part of the series. If you haven't checked out the first two parts, please do so that you cover all the questions and learn and prepare for your interview very well. Before we get started with the question answer series, I would like to inform you that I have a Bootstrap 5 full tutorial playlist on my channel, which has around 40 plus hands-on tutorials and live examples and project. Make sure you check it out in order to learn boot and master Bootstrap 5. You can get all these question answer series as a PDF. If you would like, you can get it at arctutorials.gumroad.com. If you have any questions, write to me at surya.aradhya@gmail.com. Thank you so much in advance. Let's get started. The first question in today's part series is, what is a button group and what is a class for basic button group? When you want to join multiple buttons in a single line or stack, right, you can use button group. Multiple buttons can be placed together on a single line using button groups. That's the importance of button groups. You should also mention the class that is used for it, which is btn-group. When you add that to a div and place buttons, they all come in the same line, they stack up. Just like how I've shown here, div class equal to btn group and then couple of buttons, they all will appear in a single stack or single line. Whenever such questions are asked you, make sure that you talk about the basic um, fundamentals of it, right? And then you give the detailed explanation of the classes that are used. The next question is, what is a breadcrumb? Breadcrumb is an efficient way to show hierarchy based information on a site. User can easily check which current page he is on and he can jump and navigational usage. For example, if somebody is inside a category and then home, category and page, you can always give those breadcrumbs so that user can know where he is exactly and he can jump to other navigations using those breadcrumb links. The class that is used to define the breadcrumbs is breadcrumb. You can see here it's an ordered list class breadcrumb, and inside that you'll give breadcrumb hyphen item. That's for each element that you want inside the breadcrumb, that will become breadcrumb item for the list elements. You can have n number of items there, and the current page will be active, which will be disabled. Rest everything will be a link. You can add that. What are badges in Bootstrap? Badges can be used as a part of links or buttons to provide a counter. Badges are small count and labeling components, right? So you can, let's say you have your inbox, you have your settings, notification, messages, etc., where you see a number with a small highlight, right? So you can use badge class for that. You can use badge like how I've shown here, button, and you can always apply a badge to it. Here if you see the button is there, inside that I've put notifications and a span class. This will show the counter number 4 against notifications because I'm using the class badge. These are responsive classes, which means you can add different variations to it inside. You can add all the utility classes like background color, text center, etc., etc. How can we make an image responsive in Bootstrap? This is again one of the most important questions, I would say, with respect to image mapping, etc. So make sure that you add a class called img-fluid. When you make that, you can make an image responsive, right? What it does internally is it will put the max width to 100% and height as auto, so that way it will nicely match with the parent element that it is containing. Okay, so remember the class, that is img-fluid. Alright, now what is a scroll spy in Bootstrap? Now there are requirements. Let's say you're building a single page application where you want to navigate in the same page, but at the same time you want to indicate the link to be active, right? So it will jump to that particular section and make the link as currently active. That's where we will use scroll spy. The way you do it is you give a href scroll spy heading 1 and the same ID you will give into the section, and then it will work on a navigation basis. It will update the current link as active. What is a toast in Bootstrap? So when you want to do a push notifications to your user, we use Toast, which is a lightweight, easily customizable alert message. In other words, you can also say this is another way of showing a notification to a user, kind of an alert message, but much more lightweight. The way to use it is you'll define class equal to toast, and then toast will have a header and then the body, toast body. We can have different variations of it. You can again change color, background text, add utility classes, etc. Alternatively, optionally, we can also provide this close button to it, where it will close on manual click, or we can program it and after a few seconds it will automatically go away. The next question is, how can one create an alert in Bootstrap, right? So this is one of those basic questions to confuse you. Sometimes they'll ask you about toast, they'll ask you about alerts. So they are looking similar, but their behavior is different. They are two different set of components. Like I mentioned earlier, toast is much more lightweight, and with alert, the entire div will be primarily appearing on your screen, which can take multiple classes to highlight the message, like alert warning, danger, primary, secondary. You can use the contextual classes like bg hyphen success hyphen info warning danger success, etc. What is Bootstrap card and how do you create one? So this is again very important, even from everyday perspective in terms of usage. We will use a lot of cards to design our web pages. A Bootstrap card is a bordered box with padding surrounding its content. Okay, now you can have different combinations of cards. You can have with header, we can have with footer, we can have content, we can have images, etc. In this example, if you have to talk about like this: create a div using the primary class equal to card. You can throw in an image and say card image top. You can have card body, you can have card title. This is the main content of the card, and you can have some card footer also. Extremely important concept from a implementation, so make sure that you check out the tutorials I have on Bootstrap 5 in order to learn and master that. What are the two types of spinners that are available in Bootstrap, right? Now they can also ask you about how do you create a spinner border, or how can you create a spinner grow spinners, etc. So there are two types of spinners that are available in Bootstrap mainly: spinner border and spinner grow. Spinner border will show a simple border with spinner, whereas grow will come from small to big. To use them, we will use two classes, one for spinner, one for border, and one for spinner grow. You can use class equal to spinner hyphen border, or you can use spinner hyphen grow. Okay, these are the two variations that we have in terms of spinner. Alright, that brings us to the end of part 3 question answer series. I hope you're learning, I hope you're enjoying. If you have any questions, any doubts, reach out to me in the comment section. Don't forget to check out the ebook at rtutorials.gumroad.com. I'm sure after this particular series you will be an expert in Bootstrap and you will be able to answer any interview question. We'll continue this series in the next part, in the part 4. Stay tuned for that. See you in the next episode. Welcome back to ARC Tutorials. This is Bootstrap Top 55 Interview Question and Answer Series. This is the part 4 of the series. If you have missed out on the first 3 parts, make sure you check out the description box below, and please go through all the parts so that you can learn and master Bootstrap and crack that interview. Let's get started. Before we start with the question answer series, I'll request you to please check out the Bootstrap 5 full tutorial playlist I have on my channel. It has around 40 plus tutorials and live examples and project that will help you really master and learn Bootstrap end to end. You can get all these interview question and answer series in a single PDF copy as ebook. So make sure you check it out at arctutorials.gumroad.com to get your copy. If you have any questions, write to me at surya.arad@gmail.com. Let's get started. Alright, so the first question in this part is, explain input groups in Bootstrap. There are times when you want to add certain symbols, certain characters, certain words in front of your input boxes. Okay, like for example, you might want to add at the rate in, let's say your website is google.com/@, you want to add something, or twitter.com/@. So that basic add-on you can add or text, right? And that is done using input group. That means you're grouping multiple inputs together with a label. Here you can see the usage. We can give div, we'll give input hyphen group. That means this entire thing is one group. And then you'll have a class input group text. And what is the text we are appending is at the rate. Similarly, then we'll put the input text box. These two will come together in a single line as it one element. Why is this important? It's important because you might want to add a lot of stuff at the starting or appending or prepending, right? So either way you can use input group. Now Bootstrap table and various classes that can change the appearance of the table. Now this is a very generic question often asked to start the conversation or basic initial questions. They'll ask you to talk about explain Bootstrap table and how what are the different classes you can use with it, right? So a basic Bootstrap table features horizontal divisions and light padding. Okay, it's just a regular table to display data, and the class that you'll give is table. Okay, and then you can have different variations of it, like you can give table hyphen striped to give us zebra stripes to the table alternate rows. You can use table bordered, that means you will enable all the borders on the table and cells. You can use table hyphen hover, which means you will give a hover effect on mouse over gray background color, right? So those are the basic classes to change different variations of the Bootstrap table. Now this is an extremely important question, and I want you to go stop here for a couple of seconds, understand, go through all of this, which are media queries. How can you implement media queries in Bootstrap? The other way of asking this question can also be explain media queries in Bootstrap, right? So if you want to write custom queries, right, in Bootstrap, we can always use the breakpoints that are defined, right? Like for example, at the rate media min width 576. That means you're working with a small device. If you're working with minimum width 768, that means you're working with medium devices, tablets, etc. Larger devices like a laptop, minimum width 992, large devices 1200 and above, and extra large will be 1400 and above, right? So you will write at the rate media and then min width and start writing your media queries. If you are trying to customize the look and feel on a mobile device, let's say portrait mode or orientation, we can change that also, all right, along with it. So remember these classes because they are extremely important. They are going to ask you about media queries, and these are the values that you should remember, not only for the interview but also because you'll start working, you will start using these aggressively. Now this is again a question to check you have knowledge on any of the other frameworks other than Bootstrap, right? More often than not at our job we'll have to learn some other frameworks or integrate or work with some other CSS frameworks or UI frameworks. Some of the leading alternatives are Foundation, Materialize, Material Design Lite, Skeleton, Pure CSS, Semantic UI, and UI Kit. These are the different other alternatives. They are available as Bootstrap. Some of them are paid, some of them have support, licensing support, etc. But more or less the foundation remains same for all the frameworks, which is the grid support, the responsiveness, the mobile first, the components, the utility classes, the media query support, etc. Now what are the different button styles available in Bootstrap? Now you talk about this like BTN default, BTN primary, success, info, warning, link, and danger. Right, so these are the different styles of buttons that we can use in our Bootstrap application. What is a progress bar in Bootstrap? A progress bar is used with HTML tag style in HTML element using progress keyword. Right, now this is to show the progress, right? We know the progress bar how it looks. In Bootstrap we use HTML5 progress with CSS classes, right? And that is what makes it progress bar. You again, it's a relative thing, again not very highlight topic, but still you should know what is a progress bar, and we have seen this in our tutorial playlist also. Make sure that you check it out, and all these questions that I've covered, all this we have done live tutorials in our Bootstrap 5 tutorial playlist. Make sure you check them out. Okay, now the question comes, explain some of the progressive contextual classes that are used with the progressive bar, right? So you can use progress hyphen success, info, warning, danger, primary, secondary, all those classes which we use as background colors, right? Contextual classes we can use with progress bar. Explain collapse in Bootstrap. Now this is one of the key things because for some of the components you will require this to know about this knowledge. Even if not with components, just in general also you should know, because you here on a click or some action you're trying to hide and show some element in the page. Toggling basically. So toggle the visibility of content across your project with a few classes. It acts like accordion style, right? So what you'll do is you will use the collapse and you will target it, basically which element you are trying to target. Okay, on this click of a button, here you see collapse example. Now that's what we are trying to do here. Data BS target, and we are telling that controls the collapse example. When you click on this button, this div will close or open, will show or hide basically. So collapse is nothing but toggle, remember that, show and hide, like display none, display block. That's all it does in the background. Alright, now this is yet another very important, especially because they will now see your knowledge, real knowledge of working, okay? And you will only use gutters in Bootstrap when you're trying to customize the actual work, right? You cannot learn this theoretically. So gutters are nothing but the padding between your columns, right? By default, there is a 15 pixel gap on each side, left and right, of all the cards and the columns. Now gutters help us to responsively adjust, right? And they know which breakpoint they need to come down or move and align, all of that. So gutters are important because they add padding between your columns and are used for responsive spacing. Okay, so very important. So how do you assign them? You, for assigning horizontal gutters, you can use GX, and for vertical gutters you will write GY. Okay, remember that these are the two important things that you will give. Alright, that was quick and time just went. So we are at the end of part 4 series of Bootstrap Top 55 Interview Question and Answers series. Next will be the last and the final part of this particular series. I'm covering around 55 questions which are mostly asked, and if you do these 55 correctly, I think you should be able to answer at least 98% of the questions in the any interview. I hope you're enjoying this series. Please join me in the next episode. We will continue and close this series in the next part. Thank you so much for always supporting me. Keep doing so. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode. Welcome back to ARC Tutorials. This is Bootstrap Top 55 Interview Question and Answer series. This is the fifth and the last part of this particular series. Make sure that you have seen all the previous 4 parts so that you entirely learn and master Bootstrap 5 and crack that interview. Before we get started, I'll request you to please do check out the Bootstrap 5 full tutorial playlist that I have on my channel. I have covered over 40 plus hands-on tutorials and live examples. After that playlist, I'm sure and confident that you will be able to learn and master Bootstrap end to end. Alright, you can get all the PDF book, the ebook of all these interview question and answer series together in one PDF book at arctutorials.gumroad.com. If you have any questions, write to me at surya.arad@gmail.com. Thank you so much. Let's get started. Alright, let's talk about the first question. Explain types of lists supported by Bootstrap. Bootstrap supports 3 types of lists, such as ordered list, unordered list, and definition list. Okay, you already know probably ordered list and unordered list from CSS, right? An ordered list will give you numbers, right, in a sequential order. Unordered list will give you a, by default it's a bullet list, right? Definition list is a type of list. Each item can consist of both DT and DD elements. DT stands for definition term, and then DD stands for actual definition, okay, detail. So these are the 3 different types of lists that are available as part of Bootstrap. How can you create a tabbed pills or vertical pills navigation in Bootstrap? Okay, now again interesting question, because we have seen multiple questions in the previous episodes on navbar. So nav is something that you can use in a different variations. For one, to create tabbed navigation, we'll use .nav tabs class. Okay, so it's a basic unordered list, and you'll assign the class nav, and then inside we'll write nav tabs along with it. What it does is that it will give a tab structure. If you want a pill kind of a look and feel, again you will write a unordered list with .nav class, and inside that we'll assign nav pills to that particular element. Similarly, vertical pills, if you want that, you will add .nav and .nav pills classes. Same thing, navigate nav. If you know navigation, you can have all these variations that you can explain to the interviewer. Explain floating labels in Bootstrap. Okay, now this is something create beautifully simple form labels, right, that float over your input fields. When you click on it, the label goes little up, right? That those are called floating labels. How do you create them? You give the class form floating and then type and then give the placeholder and give the label. Okay, now once you give this label and you add this class which is form hyphen floating, the the text label will go up every time user clicks on any input field. Those are called the floating labels in Bootstrap. Explain validations in Bootstrap forms. Right now, providing valuable actionable feedback is very important to users, especially with respect to the form validations. Now, form validations can be applied via two pseudo classes, right? Now, a lot of times we do this using JavaScript and not rely on CSS. Okay, please mention this to the interviewer as well, that this is not an accurate way to validate. Okay, these are additional things that you can put checks, but this is not the only thing that you will put in your form. For just because what it does is it just flips between valid class and invalid class. Okay, all it does is changing the class of it based on certain criteria. But for example, let's say required, right? Basic HTML5 validations. If it's a number field, you cannot enter text. If it's, let's say, a required field, you can't leave it empty. So those are very restricted kind of validations, but those are the basic ones available as part of Bootstrap forms. The way it works is needs validation is the class you will add, and then you will give required, not required, number, email, etc. as part of HTML5 properties, and inside the class we'll write invalid feedback, and then it will know that it needs validation. Okay, very basic stuff that Bootstrap provides. There is not much you can do with respect to validations, but just the basic check to remember two important classes, invalid and valid. It will flip between those two based on HTML5 form validation. So if you know HTML5 form validations, you are good on the validation side of Bootstrap. Explain range in Bootstrap forms. Now range is nothing but you can just drag from one element, right? It's a control basically where you can apply and say starting range to maximum range, right? So it's a input type equal to range, class equal to form range. Now this is just a drag of between values that you can provide. Okay, that's called a range that you can use. Explain figure in Bootstrap. Okay, anytime you need to display a piece of content like an image with an optional caption, or you might want to add something in your element in your web page, like you're prototyping, you're building a POC, you want something, it's always a good thing to wrap your images inside the figure element. The reason being that it's a semantic kind of a code, and it would be better for the search engines as well. So how do you do that? You write the figure tag, class equal to figure, and inside that you write the image, figure image, and then the caption for the image. Okay, this is a good way to display elements, and image will be displayed and the label will be displayed below it. Explain z-index in Bootstrap. Now this is something that everybody should be aware. All UI developers, no matter whether you're working with Bootstrap or not, everybody should know about z-index. It's not part of the grid system, but it plays an important role in lot of components, right? Let's say you want to bring a component on top of, overlay on top of other elements. That's where we will use z-index property. So whenever you have overlapping borders within components, Bootstrap uses a low single digit, okay, like 1, 2, 3 for default. Again, if you have lot of elements, hike up the number and it would start showing up on top of them. Okay, so remember, why do we use z index? It is to position an element overlapping on other elements. We will use z index. It gets the priority and the element will be placed on top. Explain off canvas in Bootstrap. Now, off canvas is nothing but if you want to build a hidden sidebars in your project, right? Like say a click on it and the sidebar goes away, or a shopping cart which shows the summary, etc. These are some of the use cases where you can use off canvas. Now it's a sidebar component which gets toggled, like a click you show and click on hide, right? Think of it, off canvas is nothing but a sidebar which is hidden. Okay, and you can always bring it up based on any interaction, like a click, show, click, hide, right? Toggle basically. And those are done by the triggers, and triggers are nothing but a event which like click, etc. Explain placeholders in Bootstrap. Placeholders are, let's say you are loading some data, right? You might want to indicate that some data is loading while you're fetching the data from API. You can put a small placeholder like a glow, like if you see that mostly on YouTube when there is a video trying to search and load, in the search results you would see that. Now same thing you can also replicate using placeholder hyphen glow. When you put this, the entire thing will become like a glow while it is data is being loaded. Once it is loaded, the data will be replaced. Very visually appealing. A lot of websites use this now, so it is slowly becoming a norm. So make sure that you know about this practically also. Alright, explain clear fix in Bootstrap. Now we know what happens and how the elements get aligned, right? If not, I'll suggest that you check out the CSS properties called float and clear. Float means we tell which direction it has to go in, left or right. Same thing. Now what happens is when you start giving a direction, let's say you say an element as float left, everything that follows it will start going towards left unless we clear it, right? So that's where we use the clear property of CSS. Bootstrap calls it clear fix. So we can easily clear any floated content within a container by adding the utility class clear fix. Make sure that you learn about floats and clear in CSS, because clear fix is doing exactly same thing. Okay, nothing different. It will, whatever elements are floating, when you use clear fix, it will stop and break that chain. Okay. Explain text truncation in Bootstrap. Yet another very useful utility class, very underused, but I would suggest that you start using it in your applications. Let's say there is very lot of long text, right? And you want only certain characters. So you can just put a text hyphen truncate and it will start showing dot 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 if that width increases or overflows, right? So the class utility class is called text hyphen truncate. That way you can restrict the width of the content, and any content that is overflowing will start showing as dot dot dot. That means there is more content to it. Important class, make sure that you check this out. Explain tooltips, right? Now tooltips, popovers, drop downs, all of these in Bootstrap will require you to use a library called popper, right? Bootstrap depends on popper to provide all such overs, okay, layovers or whatever you call them. So tooltips, popovers, drop downs in Bootstrap use popper. Okay. Now tooltips are like to provide a user experience like a suggestion, or when user hovers on something you show a tooltip and show the message to, right? So those are very useful, very helpful to the end user in terms of user experience. You can position tooltips either at top, bottom, right, left. You can customize the look and feel also, since they are using the contextual classes. Like you can have the look and feel, you can change the color, background, all of that. By default it's the black color with white font, small ones. They have zero title lengths, are never displayed. Okay, by default they are not displayed. Only on hover or something you will get to see the tooltip. Alright, that brings us to the end of the series of Bootstrap Top 55 interview question and answer series. Thank you all so much for joining and supporting this series. I wish you all the best. You can get the PDF copy at arctutorials.gumroad.com. Make sure you get your copy, And if you have any questions, reach out to me in the comment section or write to me email at surya.arad@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to help you. I wish you all the best. Go ahead and crack that interview. Thank you so much for joining.